Hey y'all, welcome back to Astrology Decoded. So, Mercury retrograde. Let's talk about it. Mercury doing head spins in the microwave. It's a thing. I'm not going to tell you it isn't because it is. However, I feel like we've been telling ourselves an incomplete story about it. And incomplete stories, well, they tend to create panic, they create excuses, and they create a whole lot of unnecessary suffering over something that is actually, when you understand it fully, one of the most useful transits in the entire astrological calendar. Yes, I said what I said. So let's get into it. Okay, so boom, first off, I want to say that Mercury retrograde jokes, I love. I enjoy the astrological memes. So many of them are absolutely hilarious. And let me be real, humor is actually a brilliant way to make a complex concept accessible. They make something that could feel intimidating feel a little bit more human, right? So the jokes, we keep them coming. We love a good laugh in this space. What I am less fond of, though, and I say this with love, is the arrogance that sometimes sneaks into conversations like this or similar. The people who mock others for believing in Mercury retrograde or any aspect of astrology while simultaneously holding a whole set of beliefs about things they cannot see, touch, or scientifically prove. I'm not going to name names. There is no dramatic call out happening here at all. But I will say it is a little interesting that we'll believe in all kinds of things we can't see or verify or fully explain. But astrology is where some people draw a very hard line with arrogance at that. I mean, the sky is literally right there, but whatever, that's neither here nor there. Today we're here to talk about Mercury retrograde specifically. Anyway, what it actually does, what it is, and why it's more than what these internet streets has made it out to be. Now, let me start by validating what some of you watching already know, because in all truth, the things that people do say about Mercury retrograde, they're not wrong. Communication can get very complicated. Technology does glitch. Emails get missed or misread. Contracts get messy. Travel plans go sideways. Conversations that should be simple suddenly feel like you're navigating a freaking minefield. That's real. It's documented. That's been observed and tracked by astrologers for centuries. And if you've ever lived through Mercury retrograde while paying close attention, then you know. You know. And for me personally, I know Mercury is retrograde when the drivers around me start doing some of the most diabolical, absolute wildest shit on the freaking road. Like, who gave you your license? Who approved this? Can somebody please hand me a Jetsons flying car right now? Oh, and the technology. The freaking technology. If you've ever had a session with me during Mercury retrograde, you have had the sheer entertainment of watching just how bad technology will do me during that time. Yep. The glitches, the delays, things that worked perfectly the day before, suddenly deciding that today it ain't gonna work for me. So yes, the chaos is real. I'm not gonna tell you that it isn't. But what I am here to tell you is that the chaos on the outside is only half the story. And most people never really make it to the other half. So just getting just a little bit personal here. And honestly, let me know if there is something that I say that you've related to, okay? I used to be one of those people, the panicker. The moment someone said Mercury goes retrograde next week, something in me would immediately tighten. I would brace, I would shut down, and I'd start taking stock of everything that could possibly go wrong during that time. And when things inevitably got complicated, because life gets complicated, retrograde or not, I had a very convenient explanation ready. Mercury retrograde. It's all Mercury retrograde's fault that all this is happening to me right now. Full stop, case closed. It ain't my fault, not my patterns, not my unresolved anything. Mercury. And listen, I ain't judging that version of me. She was doing the absolute best that she could with the understanding she had at that time. But eventually for me, a shift began to unfold with how I received, perceived, and even responded to Mercury retrograde. The more I studied, the more I read, the more I actually sat with the patterns instead of reacting to them, I started to notice something. Mercury retrograde wasn't just messing with my Wi-Fi and making my commute a hellfire of a nightmare. It was also, every single time without a shadow of a doubt, bringing something up from underneath. An old wound, a suppressed conversation, a pattern I thought I had dealt with or was aggressively avoiding, quietly knocking on my door again. Sometimes one I was fully conscious of, and sometimes one I didn't even know was still lurking in my orbit. Always a level of discomfort I needed to experience and navigate instead of run from. And once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it anymore. Mercury retrograde stopped being something that happened to me, and it started being something that I could actually learn to move with. Who would have thought, right? Okay, so let's talk about Mercury. In astrology, Mercury rules communication, technology, travel, contracts, the mind, and how we process and exchange information, right? Mercury is essentially your cosmic project manager. If you remember from our last conversation, I think that's what I labeled. Yeah, Mercury. Mercury handles the schedules, the blueprints, the emails, the instructions, essentially all the moving parts that keep everything running smoothly. So when Mercury goes retrograde, and it does this about 3 times a year for roughly 3 weeks at a time, not forgetting about the pre and post shadow phases that take place roughly 2 weeks before and after retrograde itself. Anyways, Mercury retrograde is like that project manager calling for an unexpected meeting. Not because something went wrong. You may have grabbed the wrong blueprint, but no. It's more so because something needs to be reviewed. See, the word retrograde literally means the planet appears to be moving backwards in the sky. It's actually not moving backwards. It's just an optical illusion based on orbital speed. Think of when you're seeing a car driving past on the highway and you see the tires. They look like they're going backwards, but really they're moving forwards. It's the same thing, just a different vehicle. But energetically, it functions, Mercury retrograde functions like a rewind button. And notice the language that comes with it naturally. You've got review, revisit, reconsider, reconnect, revise, release, whatever. All the things that reads, okay? Mercury retrograde is not a punishment, it is a period of return. A cosmic pause that says, before you keep moving forward, let's make sure you haven't left anything of importance behind. Okay? Now, what I less often hear on these internet streets about Mercury retrograde, when I first started, and even all until now, hold on, let me start that again. The external disruptions during Mercury retrograde, the technology, the communication, the breakdowns, the travel chaos, they're real. But they're almost like a reflection, a mirror of what's trying to move on the inside. Because while Mercury is asking you to review your emails and your contracts and your conversations, it's also asking you to review something much more closer to home. Your patterns, your suppressed truths, your unfinished emotional business, the conversations you've been avoiding, the wounds you thought you healed that are quietly surfacing again, asking for just a little bit more of your attention. Think of it like a plant. You plant the seed, you water it, you give it sunlight, and then you get to watch something grow. But underneath the soil, the root system is still doing its work, still expanding, still reaching, still integrating. Mercury retrograde is like the season that slows everything above ground down so that the roots can catch up. Again, not because the growth pattern is wrong or anything like that, but because sustainable growth requires deep, healthy roots. And sometimes you have to slow down what's going on above ground to tend to what's happening below, right? That's why old things tend to surface during Mercury retrograde. That's why old conversations come back around. That's why you suddenly find yourself thinking about something or someone you thought you were done with. That's why an avoided trigger pops up louder to be faced. Mercury retrograde isn't dragging you backwards. It's showing you what still needs tending. And when you understand that, the panic starts to soften. Not necessarily disappeared though. I mean, I still feel it sometimes. Even knowing everything I know, even having studied this the way that I have and still do, there are still moments when Mercury stations retrograde and something in me just like goes, oh no. But it's a little different now because I know what to do with it now, at least for the most part, okay? So what does working with Mercury retrograde actually look like? I think that this is something that's important to talk about. I feel like other people will talk about it differently than I will here. So I'm just going to be honest about you with where I started because I didn't always have this figured out. And honestly, I still don't. Still learning. But before I understood any of this, I would panic. I would shut down. I would distract myself. I would complain. I would drag my feet or have my ass dragged by the shift in energy. and nobody was telling me anything different. The advice I kept hearing was practical, surface level practical. Double check your emails before you send them. Confirm your travel plans. Review your meeting schedule. Watch your deadlines. Don't sign contracts if you can avoid it. And honestly, the advice wasn't wrong. During Mercury retrograde, yes, read your emails twice, thrice if you can. Yes, confirm your flight plans. Yes, review the contract carefully. And if something feels off or unseen, or if you're feeling rushed, put a pause on that. Wait. But if you're aware, if you've done your due diligence, if it feels aligned and you've read every single word, Mercury retrograde doesn't have to stop you. Awareness is always the advantage, not avoidance. But here's what nobody was telling me. That the double checking wasn't just the external stuff. It was also for the internal stuff too. The patterns, the wounds, the unfinished conversations, the suppressed truths quietly asking for attention. So now I analyze what's coming up instead of immediately reacting to it. I breathe before I respond to situations, to people, to my own emotions. I have the conversation if one is needed instead of letting it fester beneath the surface. I sit with whatever's rising rather than running from it or dressing it up as something else. I look for solutions where solutions are available when I have the capacity for it, and I give myself grace for everything else, right? Do I still feel fear when Mercury stations retrograde? Yes. Uncertainty? Absolutely. Discomfort? Every single time something real surfaces. Every single time. But now I move with it with awareness now. And awareness, it changes everything. So here's what I invite you to start doing. Pay attention to what comes up for you, specifically during this time. Not what the internet says should come up. Not what happened to your friend or your favorite influencer. What comes up for you? Keep a journal if that's your thing. Even just a note in your phone. Notice the reoccurring themes. Notice what or who keeps showing up. Notice where communication keeps breaking down in your own life specifically, because Mercury retrograde has a personal layer that sits on top of the collective one. And the more that you track your own patterns, the more useful this transit becomes as a navigation tool rather than a source of dread, because that's your data, that's your map. And over time, it becomes one of the most clarifying tools in your entire self-awareness practice. Because here's the truth, right? The person who understands the language of the transit will always navigate it better than the person reacting to the chaos alone. That's the advantage of learning this kind of stuff. Not that you become completely immune to disruption and chaos, but that you understand what the disruption and chaos is for. It's not an attack, it's an invitation. And now, now you know how to answer it, right? So, yeah. Sorry. 1 second. Sorry. I forgot to put my phone on airplane mode, so like pop-ups, notifications. Anyways, quick pause before we close off because I'm just going to say it. Stop blaming Mercury retrograde for everything, okay? Your relationship didn't end because Mercury was retrograde. Your deal didn't fall through because Mercury was retrograde. Your argument didn't happen because Mercury was retrograde. Mercury retrograde may have amplified the terrain. It may have brought something to the surface that was already underneath everything, but the patterns, the unresolved things, the conversation that needed to happen, oh baby, honey, that was already yours, okay? Mercury just happened to flip the switch on and turn a light on everything. So no, Mercury retrograde is not ruining your life. Mercury is actually doing its job, which is to slow things down enough that you can review, revisit, and return to whatever needs your attention before you keep building forward, okay? Yes, the chaos is real, so please back up your files, read your emails, and double check your travel plans, okay? And the very old but common advice that says don't sign contracts during Mercury retrograde. Okay? If you're not ready for it, don't sign it. But if you're ready for it, do you, boo. Let the chaos move you forward. Okay, don't avoid it. But also, pay attention to what's rising underneath all of it, because that might be the most important thing Mercury is trying to show you. And if you're starting to see astrology as something more than just memes and mayhem, you're in the right place. So subscribe so you don't miss anything coming up next and everything I share. Okay, drop a comment, please. How do you experience Mercury retrograde? I genuinely would like to know. Your patterns and your data are things I love hearing about, and how it shows up differently for everyone. So, until next time, take care of that beautiful energy of yours, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.